Hey everyone, this is Ian Hathaway here again. Today I'm with Brad Feld, technology entrepreneur, managing director of Foundry Group, a venture capital firm in Boulder, Colorado. He's, of course, the author of Startup Communities, which is a book we've been relying on heavily in this course. And he's co-founder of Techstars, which is one of the most, if not the most successful accelerator program in the world, which is why we're here to talk to Brad today. Brad, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Ian.
So Brad, let's just get right into it. If you could talk a little bit about, kind of the thinking behind Techstars and what you set out to do at inception that, maybe was different from things that existed in the market at that time.
When Techstars was founded, it was 2006. And the notion of accelerators didn't exist. There had been, I think, one program that Y Combinator had run in Boston, and beyond that, the idea and the construct of what an accelerator was new. So when we started Techstars and ran our first program in 2007, we constructed this notion of a mentor-driven accelerator, and had this viewpoint of the value of having a relatively small number of companies, let's say about 10, 20, 30 founders, surrounded by mentors who were active entrepreneurs in the local community in Boulder, which is where we did our first program, and see what happened when we got the existing successful entrepreneurs engaged with these brand new companies in a very concentrated environment over a 3-month period. And that's where we started. And our hypothesis was very simple. It was either going to be interesting or stupid. And there were 4 of us that funded that first year, me, David Cohen, David Brown, and Jared Polis. And I think our worst case scenario was that we'd make some new friends. And it ended up surpassing our wildest expectations, both in terms of the experience at many different levels, but also the notion of how it engaged the Boulder startup community in a moment in time. And if you go back to 2006, 2007, the idea of seed stage investing was pretty non-existent. And it wasn't that it had never existed, but it was at a particularly low point, especially around the country. And it was really a pretty powerful and profound way of engaging these successful and experienced entrepreneurs with a new group of first-time entrepreneurs in a geography, in this case, Boulder. And since then, over the last 8 years or so, we've scaled that not just in multiple cities in the U.S., but internationally, and we've learned an enormous amount about what works and what doesn't work.
Well, I'll hold you to that in a moment to talk about what works and what doesn't. But what do you think it is about the accelerator model in general that is so special?
So I think there's a series of things that are unique in the context of accelerators. And a powerful and very useful reference point to think about is the idea of immersive education. So if you think about traditional college education, for example, it's on a trend line now where there's an increasing percentage of what you spend your time on that's immersive or experiential. There's this idea that as a founder of a company, one of the things that you can do is benefit from this intense, focused period of time where you have an opportunity to learn by doing. And all founders learn by doing over the life of their company. It's just typically very inefficient. And oftentimes you run very open loop for long periods of time, or you have very narrow periods of learning or views or focuses of learning from whoever you're involved with, whether they're your investors or your advisors or other people that you just happen to know. So I think that's a unique thing. It's very, very different, however, from what emerged in the late 90s as the incubator model. And an incubator model has existed since 1950 something. I can't remember the name of the first incubator now, but this notion of an incubator has a very, very different dynamic because the incentives are messed up. Part of the power of the accelerator is that it's a constrained period of time. And the language is a really useful language, is that you're trying to accelerate time in the life of your learning of your company. You're not trying to incubate your business, you're just trying to accelerate time. So in 3 months, you're trying to get 2 years worth of learning about your business to happen. And if you're a subscriber to the teachings of Steve Blank and Eric Ries, of which I'm a huge fan of, this notion of the importance of continuous learning, customer development, understanding what is going on in the context of your business from running lots of experiments and getting feedback, how critically important that is. The Accelerator allows you to really start to do some meaningful things around that. The last thing, which I think is unique, is that the Accelerator concentrates a lot of the startup community activity for 90 days around a set of emerging companies, and really allows there to be this vibrancy around innovation. And this vibrancy around innovation can happen in a geography. It can happen in the context of a large company that's looking for innovation. Many of the Techstars programs now are in partnership with companies, whether it be Barclays or Sprint or Disney. And this innovation vector is so powerful because it allows you to get exposure as companies, as startups, to lots of different things that are going to have impact on you. But it also allows the community that you're in, whether it's the community of a large company or a geography, to be able to interact with your company and much more rapidly learn and understand how to engage.
Okay, great. Well, as you said, Techstars has, almost a decade under its belt. Congratulations in advance next year.
Yeah, I think we funded. I saw the number recently. It's over 700 companies that have been funded. So it's we're now at a pace. We have about 20 programs that are active a year. So we have about 200 companies a year going through various programs.
Wow. And so there are how many different programs and how many different cities?
So we have 12 active live programs that are either geography based or with a corporate partner, and they run. Right now, there are 20 programs that get run because some of them run 2 a year instead of just 1 a year. We have another, I think, it's more than 5, less than 10 programs that are in process of being launched. So I would expect that as we head into 2016, we'll probably have about 30 programs that we execute in 2016. And each program, we limit the size of the program so that we only have 10 plus or minus a couple of companies go through the program. So usually it's 10, sometimes it's 11 or 12.
Yeah. Okay. So, in this decade of work, you've obviously learned a lot. Some of the things, that you want to continue to do, and that accelerators, people looking to emulate this model would want to do. Other things, maybe you wouldn't want to do, things to avoid, things you've learned from. Let's start with that first group. What kind of, I don't know if it's, if it's a few, maybe it's some big ideas, some best practices that you think make accelerator programs successful.
Well, there's a long list of things. I would say the quick hits are, one, really understanding what an effective mentor is and knowing how to effectively engage mentors over that 90-day period. Two, having a rhythm for the program that is absorbable by the founders. So what you want is again, to accelerate time. You're not teaching. It's not classroom setting. It's not prognosticating. And it's also not saying, go do this, go do that. But it's creating an effective context in which over that 90-day period, the different founders can absorb different things. Third, getting an understanding that there's going to be an enormous amount of stress and conflict, and that's part of what you're trying to compress into this 90-day period, because that generates a lot of learning. So oftentimes you're going to have stress and conflict between co-founders. Sometimes you're going to have stress and conflict between founders of different programs. You're going to have conflict between mentors. You're going to have conflict between mentors and founders. And having that as a modulated part of what you're doing, where the founders are having to respond to that stress and pressure and learn from it so that they build muscle for dealing with that going forward. It's building a culture that's a lifetime culture around the accelerator. We talk about Techstars being Techstars for life. Being an entrepreneur is not a single turn game. Yeah, there are some founders that are founder of one company and that's their company that they make their lives work. But there are many very, very successful founders who it's their second, third, or fourth company that becomes a successful one, or they've had multiple successful companies over a period of time. So you're trying to build this very, very powerful network that feeds on itself, and the people learn from each other.
Okay, good. All right, so let's switch gears here and talk a little bit about maybe some of the missteps that Techstars has made along the ways, or maybe some accelerator programs where they can get into trouble. I don't want to say necessarily worst practices, but maybe some things to avoid.
Yeah, I think the first, and it's in the good category too, it's really having a clear view of the mentor dynamic and what the mentor dynamic is. And I think there's an awful lot of traps you can fall into with not helping mentors understand how to be effective mentors and setting expectations for what they're going to do. You can end up in a situation where you have a mentor group that's very investor heavy, where the goal of the accelerator is to try to get lots of investors exposed to the companies, not recognizing that actually doesn't help the companies very much. Often it's just investors kicking the tires, deciding whether they want to invest or not. I think you can make mistakes setting expectations around what the outcome of the program should be. In Techstars, I think we've been very thoughtful about what we expect the outcome to be and how we try to manage to that outcome. I've heard from people who have gone through many other accelerators who say, well, the accelerator told us we were going to get a round raised, and it's 6 months later, don't have a round raised, and therefore the accelerator wasn't a success. And maybe your expectation mismatch was there, right? So it's just understanding that. I think that with many things, this is very early, very seed stage investing activity. So in Techstars, we have a mantra, which is people, 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 idea. That the idea is price of admission. The key thing is people. So you're trying to evaluate, are these founders ones who are really going to be able to build something that's meaningful, knowing that whatever the idea is going to change and morph a lot. I think early on in Techstars, we learned how hard it is to scale. So there's two ways to scale. There's vertical scale, which is just having more people come into the program, and then there's horizontal scale, which is the approach we've taken, which is to scale geographically. It's really hard. And so you see a lot of accelerators get very excited about year one. They raise some money. They run a program. Everybody's excited. They raise some more money. They run year two. Everybody's still excited, but now it's getting harder. And we've seen many, many accelerators stall because they haven't figured out how to build a sustainable model around what they're doing. And then the last is, I think, feeling like there's one approach. Like you have to get the approach right. It's evolving. It matters. It's very, very situational specific, very domain specific. You're trying to create a framework around these companies, again, to help accelerate time. And if you don't know what you're trying to do as an accelerator, and you're just trying to emulate what somebody else is doing, you don't have a point of view about what you're trying to accomplish, you're probably not going to be successful.
Yeah. All right. Well, we just got a couple more minutes to wrap up here. So anything else that I failed to ask you about, or, any other parting words of wisdom to, for people who want to, either get involved with accelerator programs or otherwise support them?
Yeah, I would suggest a place to start if you're thinking about engaging with accelerators, regardless of where you're at Techstars happy to engage and try to be helpful. So just email brad@feld.com and figure out how to be helpful, regardless of what you're doing, whether it's creating an accelerator from scratch, trying to get engaged with an accelerator, or just trying to learn from it. Another is look at the Global Accelerator Network, GAN.co. That's a collection of about 100 accelerators around the world. Techstars created the Global Accelerator Network as a way of trying to generate best practices, many of which emerged from Techstars initially, but we've all learned from each other. I don't view Accelerator as a zero-sum game. I think we're so far from saturation in terms of the demand for this kind of activity that the idea that there should be accelerator programs all around the world, virtually in every city in the world, not dissimilar to the idea that you should have universities in pretty much every city in the world. So the ability to engage is pretty easy. If you're part of a large company and you're thinking about trying to figure out how to do something around accelerators, and that's been a big part of our expansion at Techstars, happy to help with that, even if it's not a fit for what we're trying to do. We'll put you in touch with other people that are running programs in other corporations. So I think if I left a parting message, there's a very inclusive world of a number of people who are running accelerators. Engage with them. Don't be bashful about it.
All right. That's a great chat. Thanks very much, Brad Feld. Thanks again for being here, Brad.
My pleasure.